You hear me?
I got you now. I got you
All
now.
right, 10 Hut.
As you were. How's everything going this week, Rob?
All right, hanging in there, keeping busy. A lot of stuff to talk about here on this executive perspective. So
yeah,
that
good. Is true. I appreciate you keeping the Florida weather up here in New York with you. It's a beautiful week it's going to be this week. But like you said, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff in the news pertaining to the NYPD, to perception. We talk about the executive perspective, right? But it's the perception of the NYPD that's really being called into question in a lot of different ways. We're going to talk about a couple of different things with that today. But just before we get started, just a couple of things I'd like to discuss. First and foremost, 4 years ago this week, the world lost a wonderful person in Sergeant Special Assignment Natalie Brill, who was assigned to the Candidate Assessment Division. Here she is actually celebrating my birthday with me at, you're looking at her on the left, if you're looking at the screen. She was in charge of our Candidate Relations Office at the Candidate Assessment Division, and she passed away on May 2nd, 4 years ago. So I just want to keep her memory alive and to acknowledge her for all the work that she's done, which is going to bring me to my second point. And normally, I really don't care what people have to say about me, about what I say, either on this show or when I used to be at work. It comes with the job, right, Rob? You're the boss. People are going to talk crap. People are going to say things about you. They're going to call you out on things, whatever the case may be. But last week we had a show. The main topic, we were talking about the psychological assessment section, and a lot of the questions with the whole hiring practice surrounded around the Inspector Terrell Anderson scandal, if you want to call it, whatever the case may be, about his overturning 70 psychological failures and putting them through the lowering of the standards of the background investigations. And my assessment to that was a lot of it was in response to the fact that they don't have the candidate pool that I had when I was there. Now, I left there in 2018, and I made that perfectly clear. And I had made statements that when I was there was absolutely no pressure that we've ever had, myself, Chief Pollock, any of the executives, and I sat in the highest of levels of meetings up to the first deputy commissioner and people from the police commissioner's office. And we were never pressured on any DEI movements or hires. We were pressured to get a class filled with qualified candidates. And that we did. So what we did was we evaluated the candidates, we came up with the best candidates, and then generically or naturally, the classes would be diverse. And we had some of the most diverse classes while we were there in Candidate Assessment Division. And that just came organically from doing proper investigations and having an appropriate candidate pool to go through. I talked about the difference in problems. One of the problems we had was a backlog and not being able to process the candidates we had, as opposed to Inspector Anderson's problems of not having enough candidates to process. And then for whatever reason, putting through candidates and putting through, lower background standards and whatever the case may be. So I didn't appreciate being called I'll say disingenuous about my time there. People saying, I got messages, come on, bro, it's just us. You can tell the truth. I tell the truth. We're going to talk about things tonight that people aren't going to like to hear. You've talked about, when you were on the show with Eric and John the other day on Friday, about things that people don't want to hear about conversations that have been had with us that we weren't what the job was looking for at the time for promotions and things like that. I've said it openly. I have no problem speaking my truth. There's a difference. This is the executive perspective. We talk about our opinions, our perspective on the job, on law enforcement things from our vast knowledge and experience on the job. But there are times when we are talking about our specific truths and experiences that we've lived through and that we have dealt with. And that is one thing that I don't compromise my integrity. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to cover for people. I think that was obvious when I spoke about a friend of mine that got caught up in the whole scandal up with Jeff Madry's office. And so I'm going to say it again. And I say it to honor the memory and legacy of Nat Brill. And that's why I bring it up. Because Natalie Brill, like I said, was in charge of our candidate relations. And she cared about every candidate, no matter what their race, color, creed, sexual orientation was. It didn't matter. If they were a candidate and they were a qualified candidate, she was going to advocate for them. Period. End of story. It was about the candidate, nothing more. We didn't look, we didn't ask. When we were doing our reviews, we didn't even have the race or whatever. We talked about a candidate and we talked about whatever the specific derogatory information was that needed to be reviewed. So that's all that mattered. So there was no pressure. I wanted to clarify that again. Like I said, I normally, doesn't bother me. People say whatever they want. They can agree, they can disagree. I have a saying, right? And I put it on the back of the plaques that I sent to Eric and John prior to us starting the show. Your perspective matters. Everybody's perspective matters. And everybody's perspective is different. That's what makes the world a wonderful thing. So you don't have to agree with me. But if I'm speaking from a fact and a truth, then it's a fact and a truth. If I'm speaking my opinion, you don't have to agree. So I just didn't appreciate being called disingenuous or, that I was trying to cover for something and everything else, because that wasn't the case whatsoever. So I think enough is said on that. Another big thing, I'm sorry, Rob, I'm just going to go on.
Can I just add something on that?
Yeah, sure.
Like literally, there's no reason for us to lie. We're not looking for anything.
No.
We're here just trying to help, to educate, to give our opinions, right? But there's no alternative purpose for us to do this. We're not looking for the big PC job or the chief of police job somewhere else. We're here to tell the truth because we care and because we want everybody to move forward. So the things that you hear from you or from myself, it's the truth. It's from our experience. There's absolutely unequivocally no reason for us to fabricate anything. That's what we're here for, to bring light to things that people in the department can't, and to educate people from our own experience.
Right. Yeah, and I specifically said that I cannot speak on current states there except for things that I had heard, and of reasons behind whatever Inspector Anderson decided to make those decisions where he had the authority to do so. He's the one that's going to have to answer for that. I'm not going to answer for that. But so I appreciate that. Yeah, and again, it's just, like you said, people say, "Oh, what are you going to do when you retire, Ron?" I didn't expect to even do this. I joked around, what I'm going to do. I'm going to upgrade my sports package in my cable, So that I have no desires, no aspirations to, like you said, become some chief somewhere, become some politician somewhere, do anything like that. I'm not covering for anybody. I'm not lying for anybody. Listen, I like to be more positive. I like to find the positive in things. I like to address issues like that we're going to address tonight and try and find positive ways to maybe get through them and move forward from them and not just bitch and moan. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to call BS on BS, and I'm not going to speak the truth. We're always going to speak the truth here, and it's a First Amendment platform, so people can speak their truth. But other things, everybody's got a story about a relative, a friend that got unfairly disqualified because they were a male white, or they were this, or they were that. They don't know the backstories. I saw so many backstories when I was there, and I looked into so many cases for so many people. Like I told you on the show, I was the quote unquote contract guy. I'm the one everybody called for help, right? So I saw so many stories and backstories that these people never knew about. So people don't know the full stories. So, and again, like you said, I have no reason to lie. I have no reason to be disingenuous about it. So we're gonna move on from that. And again, I normally don't address haters or dissenters, or people can say what they want. It's fine, and it is what it is. Just let's be respectful with one another. And I'm not saying anybody was disrespecting me. I just thought that in memory, and the reason I said it again, it came up is because in thinking of Natalie this week, on the anniversary of her death, a line of duty 9/11 death. I thought that was a stain on her legacy also, because of the hard work that she did and all the other men and women did while we were working there. And so that's why I wanted to bring it up. And that's that. So I also want to welcome back Eric. Eric came back to the show on Monday. So it was great to see him back in the podcast. I know he's still, you're never going to get over it. The loss of Derek. You're never going to get over it. So it was great to see him back. I know you did the show with him, right?
I did with Eric. I did it with Marlon and John. That was the last one. But like you said, it was great to see Eric back. I mean, I kidded with Eric. I said, make the podcast great again. He's back. And I also said that, I'm very happy to see Eric back, because I think Marlon was starting to get a little angry like John was. So I think that Eric's the calmness is brought back to the podcast. No, but I'm just kidding. It's great to see them back. And yeah, still, my heart goes out to his wife and his daughter, tough time. So, but he is a rock, and he's the foundation. So he will get through that, and always in Derek's memory,
Yeah, absolutely. And just one quick more note before we move on to our first topic. We're gonna have a hard out today, probably about 6:50, because we got the 7 o'clock here in New York is the Democratic mayoral debate on NBC for those who want to watch it. So we're not gonna go long today. We're gonna talk about our topics, and first topic we're gonna talk about. We already really touched on it, but it's back up again. It just keeps resurfacing. We did a show. One of our first shows, if not our first show, was on the diversity, equity, inclusion, right? It was DEI. And part of that was about the discretionary promotions of executives. And we talked about, what it's like to be an executive in that process. And, we'll talk about it a little bit more. But I think first, let's take a look at what sparked this all. And let's take a look at the Patrick Gordon video, who's the president of the Guardians Association in the NYPD.
Concerns that I receive a lot is a lot of black members of the NYPD says that it feels like black and browns are under attack right now in the agency, right? And I know we had some issues that happened a couple of months ago, but we know the agency is 180 years old, and this is not the first time they've seen something unfortunate. But it seems like the response, and this is not my words, this is the words of over 2,000 paid members. They said it seems like that the response is that all blacks and all browns are, we're all, it's not in to be black or brown, right? And some of the things that they use that's being used is some of the demotion of black executives. We had Tariq Shepard, we had Paul Gamble, we had some Latinos that was ousted, we had Miguel Iglesias. So now I receive increased pressure, like, hey, what are you doing? What is the Guardians doing? Because it's just a feeling. It may be for a number of reasons, and they may not know the reasons. There might be things behind the scenes that we don't know. But the appearance is that. The second concern that I'm receiving highly is it appears that everything is a tie now. Someone brought to my attention every promotion that we've had since January has had somebody with the last name, make a chief, right? And we've only had maybe 1-2 blacks make it, but it's a whole bunch of ties walking across the stage. And they pointed out the chief of the department is a tie, the XO of the department is a tie, the CEO of the office is a tie, personnel people. So they're like, well, we see one group running things, and this is the way it looks. And again, it may be things that I don't know, right? So, this is why I want to put it on you. And I know you're running a big city, like the police department is just one portion of what you're responsible for. And so we just wanted to put out there that these are concerns, and maybe you can help us. We can have some conversations because there might be things that people are not paying attention to, right. So we can put on a radar.
No, thank you for.
We got to both have the same face on when the video comes off.
How do you say things like that? It's like, I mean, really, when you think about it, don't you want the most qualified candidate? Doesn't matter what color they are, what sex they are. It just matters the person that you're putting on top or putting in particular positions is competent enough to handle that. When they say things like that, I mean, clearly that's racism, right? That's racist right there. Just pick people based on their color. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It's unfortunate for people that get promoted, because then the presumption is, especially when a video is leaked like that, the presumption is you got picked because of your color or your sexual, your sex, not because of your competency. And that could be the furthest thing from the truth, but that's the perception. So I just don't know why he would say that. And then to literally like talk about Italians and male whites and stuff, that to me, that's racist, and it's wrong.
And again, if you or I stood there and he stood and apologized with the Columbia Association president and said how they're going to work to move forward from this and everything else, to me, that's disingenuous. You look at the demographics of the job, and you look at the percentage in the rank of captain and above, it's pretty fair. And then when you look at even further, the time it takes on average, that big purple circle all the way on the end, that's the white male. How long it takes them to get promoted to deputy inspector, as opposed to the middle circle of blue, that's a male Hispanic and male blacks. How they get promoted, discretionary promotions, a lot quicker than we do. And that's been the case for the longest time. But if anybody else were to make those statements, the ramifications would be terrible. Terrible. I don't know. There would definitely be an EEO filed. There would definitely be, questions of racism, because you're saying that everybody would have voweled O. And first of all, I didn't know that Shell ended in O, and I didn't know that Shell was Italian.
I don't think so.
He brings up the demotions and discipline against the higher executives of color, and every one of them was wrapped in scandal. He talks about Tariq Shepard. Tariq Shepard pushed the police commissioner
on video.
Didn't deny it. The mayor said, boys being boys. No, it's a paramilitary organization. There's no such thing as boys being boys when it comes to a supervisor, let alone the damn police commissioner. So it's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's another slight on the NYPD. Like you said, for those qualified people of color who get promoted, it takes away from their credibility. Because now, did I get promoted because I'm a male black, or did I get promoted because I deserve to get promoted? And under the Eric Adams administration, his own self-proclaimed chocolate administration, his words, he points out all of the high-ranking and high-level male and female persons of color that have been appointed. So for Patrick Gordon to come out and say, since January, a couple of Italians got promoted to chief more than blacks. Well, there's a lot more male white captains and inspectors. So you would expect that more of them would move up in the ranks. Just by, listen, for those who aren't aware of the way it works, you take a promotional exam up to the rank of captain. After the rank of captain, it's discretionary of the police commissioner, which is always been the point of contention, right? Because it's their discretion. So really, there's never been a set rule of how to get promoted.
No, no. I mean, you don't know, right? You don't know you're going to get promoted. Sometimes you think because of the position or the spot that you're in, it's a promotion spot, right? So you'll say that I'm in the 4-4 or I'm in the 7-5 as a captain. You say I'm going to get promoted, or you might be an XO in a borough. You might say, all right, I'm an inspector in the borough. I just got in the XO spot. I'm probably going to get promoted to chief. But again, there's no guarantee. Here's the problem that I see. The promotion, like you said just a few minutes ago, is discretionary. So since it's discretionary, it is extremely difficult to prove that I was not promoted because of who I am. Because they can say it was our discretion that we promoted this person because we felt they're better suited for the position, they're better suited to be promoted. So your pushback on that is null, because they can say, well, it's a discretionary promotion, right? How many captains do you know that went 15, 20 years and never got promoted? So it doesn't make any sense that you can say that it was the department's discretion. So I mean, what is the real answer then? How do you fight that?
It took me almost 9 years to get promoted to deputy inspector. Almost 9 years to get promoted to deputy inspector. And yeah, it is their discretion, right? It makes, there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no longer a rhyme or reason. There used to be, back in the day, if you got a spot, you knew you were getting promoted. 100%. That went away maybe 10 years ago, little less, where it didn't matter. They just started promoting people no matter where they wanted to promote people. It just didn't matter. It didn't matter.
So real quick, 2 spots. First of all, the chief of ESU, he was never a chief. It was always an inspector. And then suddenly it became a 1-star, and then it went to a 2-star. Okay, Jimmy Cohn, who was the CEO of aviation, who busted his butt and brought aviation up to the standards that it was, retired as an inspector, which was the highest rank that they had at the time. You know who's there now? It's a 1-star in aviation. That was never a chief spot, never. So it's amazing. So I mean, yeah, did they? And I think, like Samara said earlier, the people that did like the double bumps, the triple bumps, right? So they literally jumped and skipped ranks, as she says. You know. So I mean,
You never saw those. The one anomaly of the double bump that everybody always talked about was Jaffe, right? She went from inspector to 2-star chief in charge of the Bronx under Kerrick. Then you didn't see it. And then all of a sudden, Fausto Pichardo and other people started getting these double bumps. you know, and it just there's no rhyme or reason for it anymore. And then you have the De Blasio executive order, right? You remember the De Blasio executive order? You must interview when
Right.
looking for promotion or a position of that could be promoted. You must interview a person of an underrepresented class or race,
Yep.
you know? So
I'm not gonna say that word because I had problems with it last time. So I'm gonna leave that word completely out.
Yeah, you came up with about 7 different versions of it the last
Yeah,
time.
no, so,
But we talked about that, and it's just listen. This video coming out just shows how it's okay for Patrick Gordon, the president of the Guardian Association. For those who don't know what the Guardian Association is, the Guardian Association is for black officers. It's the fraternal organization for black officers, and it's okay for him to have this video and put this video out and say these things and actually say, hey, you know, black and brown people are getting demoted, not for cause, not for reason, right? But they're getting demoted, and since it's, you know, every promotion since January, an Italian got promoted.
it's not true.
But even if it is, it's
Yeah, right.
discretionary, and there still have been people of color promoted.
It's not their discretion. That's the problem. I mean, you like Jim Riley brings up Captain Wynn, a great guy, another great captain, and I'll bring up Terry Tunnick. You know, solid guys that when they came to the scene, there was a calm, no matter how much confusion was there, and they never got promoted. So you know, just to say that you know, just because a male is a black or Hispanic that they should be promoted is not right. And there are male blacks and there are male Hispanics that are getting promoted. So I don't know what would the necessity for him to go there, for Patrick Gordon to go there and literally like crush Adams and saying that he's not getting enough. You know, I just don't understand why he needed to say that, and what authority does he have to even bring that up?
Yeah. Hey, listen, it's like, well, where's the authority come from? How about when the mayor was selecting the fire commissioner? He had to consult with the Vulcan Association, which is the fire department's, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fire department's black fraternal organization. He had to check with her to make sure that she was okay with his choice for fire commissioner before he appointed the fire commissioner. There you go. And maybe you want to address Mike Freed's.
I will. Yeah, I saw that,
there.
Mike. Yeah. So what happens with Faison is we actually interviewed him after Jimmy Cohen had left, and he has a side business with aviation, and we felt that although he did have a background in aviation at that time, I think he may have only fixed wing or whatever. But during the process of the interview with myself and Chief Whedon, we weren't impressed with his with his, you know, with the interview and everything else. So we went in a different route. We went with Louis Silviero, who was actually the XO at the time, a good guy, and moved him up. Now I know that Faison was friends with Madry, and that was the reason why he was put in to be interviewed. I know after myself and Harry Whedon basically was told to leave, was basically fired as a 3-star chief, that they eventually put in Faison in there, and then I believe on the Madry he got promoted. So I mean, to me it was pure favoritism. Now I'm not disputing that he doesn't have some aviation skills, absolutely, but I'm just saying that at the time I think it was a DEI move. It was also maybe it was friends with Madry and taking care of his friends.
Yeah, that's,
you know,
that's my take on it.
but whatever the case, I mean that's why I think that. Then there are a lot of other qualified guys, you know, within the department that have military background. aviation background and things like that. So yeah, he did have a little bit of aviation experience. I will definitely give you that. Absolutely, Mike. But there were other aspects that we didn't like about his interview.
Yeah, and again, it comes back to cronyism and taking care of your friends and everything else. I mean, at least there they can justify it with his aviation background. But he went there as a DI, didn't he?
Yeah, he might have been a Fullenberg. I'm not sure, but I mean, that's the whole point, really. If
Right.
he got the position because of his qualifications as an aviator, that's fine. But to make it a 1-star spot, it's not a 1-star spot.
No.
When I was the XO of SOD, I was a 1-star. Okay, and they moved Aaron Bolus up to a 2-star in ESU. So there's a little bit of a conflict there, because I have to diplomatically talk to him, even though I have the backing of a 3-star. I still have to be politically correct. So then they moved Faz on there, made him a 1-star. Now Jerry Dowling at the time was a 1-star. Now he's a 2-star, but he was a 1-star. So now that it's equal rank. So I mean, the chain of command was completely broken, and it doesn't make sense. Just you want to put a guy in a spot to give him that star or give him an inspector, then put him in a spot that's equal to the way that they can be supervised and supervise other people. It was off tilt a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, there's no rhyme or reason any longer. There's no rhyme or reason. No matter where you are, you can get promoted in any command. You can get promoted in any position. Look at Terrell Anderson. He spent 2 years at candidate assessment. When I got the candidate assessment, the CO was a 2-star chief. I was an inspector. I was supposed to get made chief as the XO, 2-star, 1-star. Right? Didn't work out. That chief was moved on. They moved in another 1-star chief, kept me as an inspector, brought in another inspector when she left, made him a chief, brought in Terrell Anderson, and he was never made chief for some reason.
No.
So there's no
I'll bring
reason.
I'm sorry.
No.
I was going to bring up Samara Cohen. She says a 1-star in charge of 100 guys. Now, I don't even know if there's 100 guys in aviation. When I was the XO of SOD, I was an inspector for the longest time, while Whedon was a 2-star. We had at the peak of 1,472 people, and I was an inspector, and I was fine with it. I had a good spot, but then a position where somebody has less than 100 people, all of a sudden they're a 1-star. It's like you said.
I was a borough commander for housing. I covered 3 PSAs, right, in the Bronx and Queens. I had over 1,000 uniformed and civilian members working for me in 3 commands, right? In 3 different patrol boroughs, right? Because it's Queens North and Queens South for PSA 7, and then the Bronx for PSAs 8 and 9, right? I was an inspector. There's no rhyme or reason for anything.
No.
I don't know. Yeah, anything else on this one?
No, I mean, you're right. They just put people where they want to put, and they're going to promote them no matter what. So
And that's part of the problem too, is when people look at the job, they say, why are these people in the positions? I give that the old school analogy of putting the right people in the right seats on the bus makes the bus go down the road evenly, right? And that's the problem, is people aren't putting the right people in the right seats on the bus. They're putting their friends in any position that they can put their friends in. They're promoting people in positions that the span of control is just totally askew. So it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So we have a lot more going on. We'll talk about some national news. This horrific event in Boulder, Colorado, over the weekend. You want to talk about that one?
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, right? I mean, there was a peaceful demonstration, and then an individual came up with Molotov cocktails. I think he had some sort of flammable liquid in a spray, and ended up, spraying these individuals. What I would consider making a racist remark, right, or a terroristic remark. And 15 individuals were, it's come up to now 15 individuals were actually burned because of this madman's actions. And then we saw a quick press conference with the city of Boulderado police chief. We want to, hit
Good
that.
afternoon, everyone. As Dion said, my name is Stephen Redfern. I serve as the police chief here in Boulder, Colorado. Today I'm here to give you very preliminary information about an attack that occurred here in downtown Boulder at about 1:26 p.m. today. At that time, Boulder dispatch received several calls to the county courthouse located at 1325 Pearl Street here in Boulder. The initial callers indicated that there was a man with a weapon and that people were being set on fire. The initial response by our officers, we were on scene very quickly. When we arrived, we encountered multiple victims that were injured with injuries consistent with burns and other injuries. While our officers and paramedics and fire department personnel got those victims quickly to the hospital, our officers were pointed out, a suspect was pointed out to our officers on the scene. Our officers immediately encountered that suspect who was taken into custody without incident. That suspect, who I'm not able to ID at this time, was taken to the hospital with some minor injuries as well. And there's a lot more we're investigating right now before I'm able to release information on that person. The scene itself is contained, but we have a large area here in downtown Boulder closed off right now. Businesses have been closed and we have asked people to avoid the area. This area is not safe yet. We're dealing with a vehicle of interest. We're dealing with a large area that we are making sure it's safe before we allow people to come back into the scene. If your vehicle is here in the several block perimeter that we have, please follow our social media. We will announce when the roads are open and people can retrieve their vehicle as well. I appreciate everyone's patience as we work through this complex scene. What I will say lastly is this was a beautiful Sunday afternoon in downtown Boulder on Pearl Street, and this act is unacceptable. I hope you'll join me this evening as we're working through this investigation. We are working, I just came from the command post. We've got dozens and dozens of people here, our state, local, and federal partners working through this to figure out exactly what happened.
I'm glad he gave us a weather report. He gave us a good weather report.
Yeah. What did he say?
No, I mean, first of all, that had already been identified by the FBI as a terrorist attack. So
Over an hour prior.
So what was his hesitation, right? And a short time thereafter, the governor of Colorado comes out and says it was a terrorist attack. But he, for whatever reason, I mean, I'm going to tell you why I think his reasons were, but he doesn't mention terrorism. There is a terrorism crime in Colorado. Okay, I looked it up. There's also a terrorism crime in New York. So you can actually charge terrorism. Okay, it's usually taken over by the feds, right? But at that, there are stipulations on the law for terrorism, and there's a specific definition of terrorism, right? Based on your religious beliefs, to change the people's views, etc., causing physical injury. Clearly a base. I mean, what do you think? Why do you think he didn't want to say terrorism?
I have no idea. It was so blatantly a terrorist attack. It was aimed at the Jewish community. There was no question that he screamed "Free Palestine." He's throwing Molotov cocktails. He's got a makeshift flamethrower,
Yep.
right? He's burning people while saying "Free Palestine." There's no reason not to say this is a terrorist attack. What you do say is, we don't know if he's lone wolf, if he was acting alone. That's going to be a continued investigation. I'm no expert in this, but I can tell you the right things to say and the wrong things to say. And to just deny the fact that it's possibly, oh, we're not going to go to the motive. the motive was obvious. Whether he was emotionally disturbed or a true terrorist, which it's turning out more and more through the investigation that he has made terroristic threats in the past. He's done this. He's overstayed his visa. You know, there's a lot to it now that obviously always comes out later in the investigation. But I don't know why he's afraid to say that it's a possible terrorist attack. Do you not want to put fear in people? He wouldn't even call. He said it was a gathering in the plaza.
Right.
He wouldn't even say that it was any type of peaceful protest, which it appeared to be a peaceful protest.
Yeah, no. I mean, so in my opinion, the Democrat, it's a Democrat-run city. It's a very liberal Democrat mayor. So he doesn't want to say it, I guess, until he gets, and I spoke about this on John's podcast in the chat, and he doesn't want to say it until he gets permission from the mayor and says, Mr. Mayor, can I say that it was a terrorist attack in our city? Now, to me, that is the most idiotic thing you do, because first of all, like you just laid out, it has all the implications of a terrorist attack, right? Every component. So to not say it, you look like a bigger idiot by not saying it, because we're not stupid. The public's not stupid.
And just an aside, I understand it's a Sunday afternoon. I understand that he came from home, but you're the chief of police.
Yeah.
The incident is hours old. Why is he wearing jeans and a polo?
I don't know. I tell that story all the time, right? I told it before on the podcast. I'll throw it out again. I'm going to a meeting, right? It's just a regular meeting, but you have to be in dress uniform, right? Because you're going to the PC's meeting. So I'm barricaded. EDP comes over, emergency disturbed person, barricaded. So I tell my driver Louis, I said, Louis, take us there. I'm going to go to barricade first. I'm not going to go to the PC briefing and then them ask me what's going on with the barricade. No, right? I'm going to the barricade. So I go to barricade, gets over quick. I'm still in my regular work uniform. So I'm changing in a car. And Louis driving crazy to get me down to 1 PP. And I'm putting on, as I'm changing in the car, because I'm putting on my dress uniform. And I say, Louis, slow down. He goes, why? What's wrong? I said, Louis, if we crash and this car flips over and my pants aren't up around my ankles, I will never, ever live it again. I'd have to retire the next day. They're never going to believe that we were running to a meeting. So he says, yeah, but yeah, I totally agree with you. Look professional. You know, everybody, they all get an extra set of dress uniform. I mean, put it in your car, right?
Depending on your position. I always had a uniform at home. If I had to go somewhere, you know, if I had to respond, like, I've responded plenty of times from home and I wasn't in uniform.
Especially as a CO, right?
Yeah. And one time I got called out. I had an MOS shot and I was at the hospital and I had, you know, jeans on, a t-shirt, and a windbreaker that I had in the car. And Commissioner Kelly asked the borough commander, who's this anti-crime guy? She goes, no, that's the precinct commander. Why did he look like that?
Right, yeah.
And this is an MOS-involved shooting where an MOS was hit, and I responded directly to the hospital. Now, I guess, did I have time maybe to run over to the command, change real quick, go back? But there's so much going on, you know. There's different instances. But here, you know, this is high profile. If I'm going to get in front of a news camera, I'm not going to go in front of the news camera, you know, in jeans and everything else, especially when you know it's going to be a nationally televised event. Just a quick thank you to Captain Chaos, 1999 to the podcast. The cheap lunch on him. So next pizza at Goodfellas is on Captain Chaos there. Well, you're here in New York. Maybe we can get together again for another slice. Yeah, it's you know, and these things, you know, Craze 107, $4.99, coffee and donuts. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's a Boston cream for me. But yeah,
Here's the other
these-
thing, though, in Boulder, Colorado. I looked it up. John will speaks about it all the time. They're relatively big into the 30 by 30, right? So they want 30% of the workforce female by 2030. And right now they have 22% female in the department, which is well above the 12% average for the department. So they're working towards that goal. And I'm not saying those women aren't there qualified. I'm saying I'm sure they are. But don't, again, it goes back to our first point, right? We talk about get qualified people. We don't need to make numbers up and stuff like that. Is, you know, we want the qualified people that are going to respond. You know, I'll always say it. If you're bleeding to death from a gunshot wound, a stab wound, or anything else, do you care what race, what color, what sex the EMT is? Absolutely not. I want somebody that's qualified and knows what they're doing. And it's the same thing with law enforcement, right? I mean, that's what you want.
yeah, 100%. And you know, we're seeing more and more of these incidences of people being burned and placed. You know, either we've seen a few people where they've burned themselves in effigy, right?
Right.
And then you have other times where they've lit people on fire.
Yeah,
you
on
had
the train,
one
right?
tragic one right here in New York with the train. Now you have this one out there. I know you've got some experience from SOD
Right.
with how this New York City is kind of combating it. You want to talk on that a bit?
Yeah. So during the George Floyd riots, there was multiple times where somebody would set a garbage pail on fire, or you know, even a dumpster, or whatever, and the Strategic Response Group (SRG) would carry what there was known as cold fire, a small little canister, and they were able to spray it on that particular fire, and it put it out. And then just through a Google search, I was able to identify that it could actually work on humans as well. So I mean, it says they work quickly, removing the heat from the fire, and rather than just smothering it like traditional methods, right? So normally you would take clothing, pad somebody out. You remember the stop, drop, and roll, right?
Yep.
That was to eliminate it. But this cold fire can could be easily put in RMPs. I'm not saying that every police officer should carry it, because I don't want to burden any more on their gun belt, right? They're carrying everything that it is now. But why not put it in the RMP? Why not put a fire blanket in the RMP? You know, and even if it's just they can use it on victims, right? But God forbid something happens to a member of the service, you can use it on as well. I mean, these are things that the department should be looking at to move forward. You know, if these incidents are happening, let's get the right equipment into the right hands. It's already known and tested and proved that I've watched it work very well, because by the time the fire department got in there with all the riots and all the street blocks out, they weren't getting in there for a while. So SRG guys, you know, under now Deputy Inspector Miller and you know, Jerry Dowling, they were able to put these fires out immediately. So
About time he got promoted, by the way.
I know, I agree, you know, and I got to mention John Diadamo. He's another good guy that does a lot of work. He's out there all the time. And all of the SRG guys who do a phenomenal work, and really got slammed because of the George Floyd's riot. They were with the decrees and everything else, they were pushed to the side, and they never ever should have been done. There's Johnny D right there.
There you go.
A good man. Yeah, and you know, just pushing all of SRG out of the way like that was also the downfall of some of the things that happened, the demonstrations, and the reason the demonstrations are out of control. But that cold fire, let's put equipment into the hands of the police officers that need it and can use it, and they can save lives with it. That's our job, right? That's our ultimate goal.
Yeah. Listen, how many times in the RMP over your career did the CO2 fire extinguisher get knocked loose from its little tiny bracket and I don't want to call it explode, but you know, ignite in the trunk,
Yeah,
right?
a white cloud.
Yeah, a white cloud in the car. Cops also playing games with it, things like
Listen, I remember if you went in the bathroom and you were sitting there doing what you had to do, and some guy came with a CO2 and blasted it underneath the door, right?
Right.
So
These actually could, like you said, these actually could be used to save lives.
right.
So it's good. Yeah, it's good that you brought that up. And like you said, here we go. We're looking at what's going on and trying to come up with ideas and try to maybe think outside the box and come up with positive resolutions for problems. It's just like you said, the way that we're handling these demonstrations. We did a whole show on it. We had Tony Raganella on as a special guest talking about disorder control and just how we've basically given the streets to the demonstrators with these protected First Amendment activities and allowing them to just do what they want. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but
U.S. Army Combat Medic has a question, and he's right. There is a cost factor to it, but I specifically don't know, but I know that it was within the SRG's budget. They were able to equip their members, so I don't think it's an astronomical cost. But I would be not truthful if I knew exactly how much it was going to cost. But I think it's worth it. You figure,
Sure.
how many precincts, how many RMPs. I think we could do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're buying in bulk.
Right.
When you're buying in bulk, it's good. We're about 52 minutes into the show. We appreciate everybody in the chat. Very active chat going back and forth and engaging with us. We really appreciate it. Appreciate everybody's support. So like a lot of people are saying, Terry SP, a couple other people, Captain Chaos, let's hit that like button, share, subscribe. If you're watching us on X, let's repost it. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the notify bell, so you'll see all our shows, see all the shows on the Finest Unfiltered Network. A lot of good stuff. So Terry Renane, thank you very much for always pushing that and talking about getting those likes up and reminding people. And if you're watching, just hit the like button, just hit that thumbs up. We appreciate it. It helps us with the algorithms. Another thing in the news, right? And this one we were actually working on, Rob. You got this intel last week. Last Friday, we had a conversation in our Finest Unfiltered chat about a memo that was going around the NYPD from Orange County. So you want to touch on that? Because we were kind of working on it, and an article came out in the paper the other day.
Yeah, no, I mean there was a memo out right from Orange County, to all the sheriffs and all the police out in the Orange County area, and it basically stated that that New York City Police Department has changed their minimum qualifications. So as such, New York State Civil Service has confirmed for us that we no longer permit or to allow the sheriff's office or Orange County town, village police departments to accept transfers from the New York City Police Department. To me, it was amazing that they would do that, right? That our standards were not up to the rest of the state, and it cut back. I mean, this right?
I don't think it's up to the civil service law states that you can't take a transfer of a police officer if the standards that they hired upon is lower than your standards. And the standards for Orange County is the 60 college credit requirement. Now that we've lowered our requirement down to 24 college credits, they no longer will accept transfers from the NYPD. So an article came out prior to the article
first
coming.
of all, you wrote a letter, right?
Yeah,
you actually emailed them.
After we spoke, I emailed the Civil Service Commission in Orange County asking for clarification because my prior assignment at candidate assessment, listen, everybody that we hired prior to this last two classes, you know, where Commissioner Tisch lowered the standard down to 24 college credits, had the 60 college credit requirement. So my question for clarification to them was, hey, what about all the members of the NYPD who were hired under the higher standards? Why should they be precluded? Well, I got a response back that they would look into it. And then today they actually responded again. And they said, thank you for your email. Per the requirements under Section 70-1 of the Civil Service Law, transfers can no longer be permitted at this time due to lower qualifications of the NYPD. The requirements for transfer are reviewed based on the current job specifications and minimum qualifications for the position, not the qualifications that were in place at the time of one's appointments. So we hope this information is helpful. And it is, in that it sucks, to be honest. But what I did think was promising was in the New York Post article, if you put that up. In the New York Post article, they did say that they're working with legislators to try and tweak the law or the civil service law to allow that, because why should someone that was hired under the adequate standards be punished? And why should the agencies in Orange County not be able to have a more qualified pool, right? So they can no longer take the transfers, but it says in there somewhere that they are talking and trying to get the legislation to amend the civil service law to allow them to take people that were hired under the appropriate qualifications. Now, we've had conversations in the past. I know we have differing views on when she lowered the requirement to 24 credits, whether it was appropriate or not. And I don't have a problem with the 24 college credit requirement. Again, I got on this job with a GED. I think I've had a pretty successful career. You know, I did okay. If you get on the job knowing that you're getting on with 20 college credits, right? And that may preclude you from other employment elsewhere. Well, as long as you do things knowingly, right? That's kind of my stance on it. But I don't think that all the people that were hired under the higher standards, I don't think it's fair that they just lost out on a big opportunity to possibly lateral over without having to start from the scratch, take the civil service exam, get on a list, go through the academy. They still don't know if they're going to be a modified academy or whatever, but still, if you got on this job with the 24 credits, then you live with your 24 credits. Like I got on this job with a GED. I knew I couldn't get promoted to sergeant until I had 64 credits, right? Then I needed 76 credits to make lieutenant. Then I needed a bachelor's to become a captain. That was on me to do, right? I wouldn't have been able to move over to Orange County because I only got a job with a GED. So, you know.
Yeah, I don't understand it. So here's a few points that I have is that the first one is if you come on the job with 24 credits and then you go through the police academy. The police academy is an accredited, so you get credit for that. So
and they increase the credits.
And they increase it, right? And I believe that at the end you will have 60 credits when you get out. So if that's the case, or close to it, well, thereabouts. So if you do, how is that you don't have the same qualifications that you've had if somebody has an associate's degree? If you have 64 credits from an associate's degree, or you have close to 60 something credits when you get out of the police academy, and maybe you need to take 1 or 2 courses to get an associate's degree, then how is that not equal to getting?
It's the standard.
Why do you need it to get on?
It's
for Orange County.
That's the standard that they have, the minimum standard to be hired.
Yeah, and that's
60 college credits. So when you go into the academy, and now I have 24 credits, I go into the academy and I get 40 more credits. Now I could have theoretically have 64 credits, college credits, right? First of all, it has to be matriculated onto a college
Which is easy. Yeah.
transcript, right?
Yeah.
So now I have to go to Empire State or go to some other college that's going to accept those academy credits and transfer them onto a transcript and give me official college credits.
Right.
But what the civil service law is saying is that the standard at the time of hire doesn't allow them to transfer laterally.
Right.
That doesn't mean that if they have the 24 credits and they matriculate the credits onto a college transcript, and now they have 64 credits, that they can't be hired, but they're being hired at the entry level. They have to take the civil service exam for Orange County, which is probably a countywide exam that, like Nassau County, where all the different agencies are on one exam. And you could be hired at that instead of just, hey, I'm an NYPD cop, there's an opening, and now Orange County Civil Service can just say, I'm taking Ron Leyson, he's a qualified candidate, boom, you're now an Orange County sheriff's deputy, whatever the case may be.
No, I totally understand, and I agree. But my point was what is the difference? What is the difference if you still have the equal amount of education, right? That was my point with that. But the whole thing is it necessary to lower the standards? And we can go back and forth with that. I know we have in the past, but my thing is there was no reason to even lower them, right? It was a recruitment problem. So there's other ways to get recruitment. What they did is, like John said earlier, John McCarty said, it brought us from the major league, into a minor league now team. And same thing what Eric said earlier, we were the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
Department. Okay, you could go anywhere in this country and say you're NYPD, and the red carpet was rolled out. Now they're rolling it up and say, hey, you need not to stay here,
And I'm not going to deny that, but I'm not going to say it's because they lowered I think a lot of it is going to be what we're going to talk about a little bit more.
I agree. It's not just because of that, but
not because of that. It's not because they lowered
it added to it.
100%, 100%, because now the entry requirements aren't the same. So if you have entry requirements of 60 credits at another department, you can no longer transfer directly over into that department without somehow combining your credits and doing more work. And then also, they're not, like I said, they're not allowing you to laterally just transfer over. You got to start from the very beginning. So I don't know what type of seniority credit you were getting by transferring over, where your time from the NYPD counted, which will no longer count for anything. Because when you got hired with the NYPD, you got hired under 24 credits.
Right.
Even if you had a bachelor's degree, the hiring requirement is the catch in the civil service law. So even people that got on the job with a bachelor's degree, not just the 24 credits, if they had a bachelor's degree, from 2 classes ago on, Orange County will not take you as a transfer, which is totally, I think, unfair, and what I think they're trying to change. But what I think the point that you're getting at, that John and Eric are touching on, is pretty much our main topic.
And I just want to go back to what QC Beast said, right? It stated that I think lowering the standards was on purpose, so no one can lateral transfer if they're not qualified for the rest of the state. So you're saying, you're shaking your head no, but I'll tell you, do you remember when guys tried to go to Port Authority?
Oh, I know very well.
Ray Kelly stopped their personnel folder from going with them, so Port Authority couldn't do it. I mean, is this the same thing? Is that the same way to keep retention, and so guys don't jump ship and go to Orange County?
No, I don't think Orange County has that big of a pool, first of all, that they're pulling that many cops from. And I honestly believe the reason they did it is the reason that they stated. That they lowered the standard because they looked at the active civil service exams that they have. And we know when we're looking at those active civil service exams, what's holding people back. And a lot of times, if it's the college requirement, we have to wait for them to get a transcripted 60 credits. So they would know. That's one of the things Natalie Brill used to do in candidate relations, is track all these things. So they said that they were able to pick up an extra 500 and something candidates or whatever for a class by lowering that standard from 60 to 24, because people that had taken the civil service exam had not yet accrued the college credits, which in the past wasn't a problem because people would take the exam and then there would be a couple of years before they called. And over that couple of years, they were going to college and getting their college credits. So I honestly don't believe, and believe me, I know personal experience about that, because somebody in my family was not allowed to leave the NYPD to go to the Port Authority because of that exact reason, because her personnel record was not released. And it was the only thing that held her up from going to the Port Authority Police from the NYPD. So I 100%, I understand. I remember that specifically. I don't think it's the same case here. I don't think they did it for retention purposes. I think that they did it in order for recruitment, because they are in such a recruitment crisis right now. And we talked about it a bit last week, that they're in such a recruitment crisis that, and I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the answer is on, what they have to do to increase the recruitment, other than make the job a better job again. And that's what our main topic really is, right? We talk about all these assaults that are going on and that continue to rise with the NYPD. Why do you think that is? Why do you think? Because we're taking on lesser qualified candidates, these Gen Z, people that aren't going through the proper vetting process and coming on this job, and are they really qualified for the job? Then we go into the training, right? They talk about training. I mean, there's so many different things, but let's just talk about on how these assaults continue to rise, right? There was a New York Post article on the surge, right? It came out after that officer was assaulted last week, right?
Yeah.
That it surged 63% in the last 4 years. Assaults on POs. Can we bring that article up? And
there was
again,
I was going to say, the article kind of depicts all the different rise in assaults, right?
Right.
Surging 41% this far this year, and compared to last 60% since 2009. I'm sorry, 2019. And then so far this year, 1,975 officers have been assaulted while on the job in the city, compared to 1,763 at the same point in 2023. Still way too many, right? I mean, you look at that number's crazy. So
yeah, I think that's a different article, but yeah, it's just the numbers, they're not getting any better.
no.
They're not getting any better. This was put out last year. When they were talking about all the cops getting assaulted, they really started talking about it last year. But what is the reason that you think that we have all these articles, right? And on what's going on with all these cops that are getting assaulted. Pull up number 11.
I think what's happening is we're putting ourselves in harm's way, right? We're allowing perpetrators, people, agitators, protesters to get way too close to us. And that gives them the opportunity to punch, slap, assault. It's where we've lost our zone of safety, which was taught in the academy, right? At arm's length away, that's where you want anybody else. Why? So you have reaction time. When somebody's in your face, right? We all saw that protester, right? Right here up against that police officer's face. We all saw that. Craziness. Where's your hands? Where's your ability to react, right? If somebody's that close to you, their hands within your firearm reach. They can do a lot of things, right? I mean, so yes, the NYPD, and I'm not saying the police officers, the rank and file, the training bureau, they've all allowed everybody to get this close to somebody, which can easily cause an injury. And it has. Now it's picked up to the point where now our officers are getting assaulted. Right? I mean, what do you think, Ron?
100%. 100%. Right there. What did Commissioner Bratton just say? Right? What Commissioner Bratton? Assault on cops can never be tolerated. The far left progressives in the city council, state legislature, and district attorney's office must see that this is not just a statistic. It's a clear sign of a broken justice system that too often fails to hold these offenders accountable. The finest have transformed New York City and deserve respect and support. They've earned it. My point is, when is enough enough? Commissioner Tisch comes out. It will not be tolerated when this officer gets his face bashed in wearing a uniform. Okay? Gets his face bashed in knowing he's a police officer, because they're not afraid of any consequences. There's no consequences. We will bring all the bear down all the resources to find you. Why don't we take our resources to avoid these things? This is what the problem is. We're not avoiding it anymore. We're reacting to it again. And when we were a reactionary police department, we were not an effective police department. Now we're not being reactionary. We're being reactionary. We're not being proactive, right? And what's going on? Chaos, and cops are getting hurt. The cops are not being trained to be in control, to control the scene, to control themselves, to control the crowd. The crowd, the city's been given to the crowd. Just look.
Yeah, no,
Just,
I agree. I mean, we talked about it earlier with the decrees relative to the, to the riots of George Floyd. There we're talking, kettling, which was a useful tool, okay? Because when you're going to make mass arrests, you kind of have to box people in. So I mean, that was the idea, that the assaults, the craziness of CCRB. We saw it in the city council, right, where they don't look at the CCRB meeting, they don't look at the totality of the circumstances. They look at the particular frame, right? It kind of reminds me of where you just take a snapshot and say, why did you do this? And not look at everything that led up to those actions. And I also agree with what some of the people are saying in the chat. The level of command presence that you need to maintain when you're out there. Okay, you have to use your authority. You have to be able to stand there and tell people no or yes or move along or whatever the case be. Don't be meek. We're not, police officers should not be meek. You need to take control. It's your situation. You're in control. Don't let those other people control. I know they have a phone in your face and they're calling you out from 50A, but you can't let them down. You can't cater to them.
So I'm gonna take a step back to your kettling and the Bronx George Floyd protests, right?
Yes, I was there.
Right, I know you were there. Eric was there. Eric picked up the majority of his charges from these protests, right?
And I know what, I'm so sorry that I didn't know Eric back then, because I would have loved to testify or went down to CCRB and be interviewed, because I know what he did. And I watched what he did, and what he did was right, was absolutely unequivocally right. And he saved people. He saved cops.
Right. And what happened? Darcel Clark dismisses 300 summonses from the George Floyd protests. Just wipes them out. I'm not going to charge them. Prosecutorial discretion. Prosecutors are hired to prosecute the laws that are broken, right? The criminals, not to make the laws, okay? Not to make the laws. 300 summonses dismissed, right? Same thing. Alvin Bragg, right? We watch video time and time again of these migrants beat the shit out of a lieutenant and a couple of cops in Times Square. Alvin Bragg, the police department, reactionary, finds them, arrests them. Alvin Bragg, no bail. I'm not quite sure who did what. So we want to make sure that we're prosecuting to get a conviction, to make sure that we get. It's on video. Everybody saw the video. Everybody saw who did what. The officers identified who did what. Total BS. Right? Let's move forward. Columbia University, Alvin Bragg drops almost every charge. There's no more consequences. And the problem is, like we said, cops need to be able to be cops, right? That's what we wanted to really title today, right? Let the NYPD be cops again, all right? You got to say, when is enough enough? That we have to take a stand as an agency and back our cops up and say, go out there and do your job, protect yourself and protect the public. There are laws on the books that are just not being prosecuted. That is not our problem. We as a law enforcement agency have a duty to arrest people who break the law. If the prosecuting end of the criminal justice system does not choose to prosecute, they are not doing their due diligence. They are not doing their duty. They are not doing what they are sworn to uphold their duties to do. And the problem that comes with that is now, because of the woke politicians and everybody else, because the DAs choose not to prosecute somebody that committed a law on video, the cop is now on the hook, right, for false arrest, right? They're going to lose. They lost their qualified immunity, which means if they did their job in good faith, that they're going to be covered legally and financially by the city for doing their job. No, Eric Dim has to go into his pocket because he got some bullshit CCRB substantiated, got charges, and because the CCRB was substantiated, the job didn't want to pay. It's enough is enough. The city is in chaos. We're not backing our cops, and that's what we need to do. We have Article 240, right, of the New York State Penal Law, number 16, offenses against public disorder. There's a whole litany, a whole list of it. Bring it up, Jack, if you can, right? Just scroll down slow, right? Rioting in the second degree, in the first degree, inciting a riot, unlawful assembly, criminal anarchy, disorderly conduct, disruption of disturbance, all of these things, all these harassment, aggravated harassment, loitering in the first degree, criminal nuisance, all of these things are charges that we see daily. They are not First Amendment activities that are protected by the First Amendment. Your First Amendment right is free speech. Your First Amendment right is not threatening speech. So when you go up to a cop and you threaten a cop, you should go to jail. When you physically menace somebody, that used to be a crime. When you used to, right, flex up on somebody, that's a physical menace. I'm going to F you up. That's harassment, and that's a physical menace. That's a misdemeanor charge. What happened to that? Nobody will arrest anybody for that anymore. Why? And I'm not even talking about just at the protests. It is spilled. It's beyond the settlement agreement with the bullshit red light, green light offenses, where you need a captain or above to arrest somebody for rioting, unless somebody's physically getting hurt.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Angry Ron's present.
Amy Ron's in the house. No, you're right. And here's the thing. So make the arrest. I think that's what we're trying to get to. Don't
100%.
hesitate. Use your authority. You have the authority to make the arrest. You don't need the DA's permission. Hey, if the DA doesn't prosecute, so what? All right, you get that mud off the street for 20 minutes, 25 minutes while you're an hour, while you run a warrant check, while you issue them a summons in the station house, and you give them the C summons and you cut them loose. I don't care if they prosecute it. You know what? And guess what? I don't care how nice you are to them. That your guy is still going to give you a CCRB, and you know what? It's going to be on your 50A. So what? Okay,
But this is where
it's going to happen.
This is where the job needs to step up, Rob. This is what I'm saying. Enough is enough, because you're right. They're going to get a CCRB. CCRB is going to substantiate that CCRB, which is now, under the disciplinary matrix, going to be an aggravating factor if you get in trouble for anything, or if they bring these CCRBs charges, because the whole BS with the CCRBs could be substantiated by that agency who, like you said, doesn't take the totality of circumstances into consideration. They take it from the perception of the civilian. It doesn't matter. They complain that the perception of the civilian, they feel like they were offended, but sometimes they can't bring charges against the officer because they didn't violate any laws, and they're upset about that because they didn't violate any law and they didn't violate any patrol guide procedures. The job needs to take the stance and not allow the CCRBs that are total horseshit to be held against these officers for doing their job. On the converse, what is she doing? And I don't like to be critical, but discipline has been increasing for minor violations in the NYPD, substantially increasing. That is not how you bring discipline back into the job. Bring discipline back into the job by backing your cops up, allowing your cops to do their job, giving them the tools to do their job safely and effectively. Back them up when they are right. Discipline them when they are wrong. I have no problem. I've never been a big disciplinarian. There are different ways to discipline people without crushing them, without ruining their careers, without completely stagnating their careers, without taking all their vacation days away. But sometimes, if that's what's needed, that's what's needed. So I'm not saying to let anybody do whatever they want. But when they are right and they are doing their job, back them up. Back them up. We have to say enough is enough. It took the city to feel that it bottomed out to accept the Republican and Rudy Giuliani to come in, right? A federal prosecutor, when we had faith in the federal prosecution system, to come in and turn this city around. And Ray Kelly, I didn't agree with a lot of Ray Kelly's policies, but Ray Kelly was a professional, and it was a professional agency under Ray Kelly. We were the GOATs. We were looked to from everywhere in the world as the example of what a professional police department is and how we were able to stomp out crime, maintain low crime numbers. We made mistakes. The 250s, the stop and frisk abuse, I'm not saying it didn't exist. Okay? I'm not saying we're perfect, but we were a professional, respected agency. People were, I don't want to say afraid of the police, but they respected the police. Even the perps knew they weren't going to get away with it. Now, people don't care. They have no respect for law and order, no respect for the uniform.
They need, first of all, they need to get rid of the matrix. The matrix does not do anything. Okay. There was a fine disciplinary process. You know, like Grouchy eventually says, I also remember this, when officers were placed on IEB monitoring, if you charge discon, obstructing governmental administration and resisting 3 times. I remember that, like, if the guy resisted, sometimes you were like, I'm not going to charge him with resisting because, you know, it's in the 12-month period. I'm beyond monitoring. I remember all that. But the matrix, to me, all the matrix does is allow for a civilian who has no police experience, that was put in a position and a cushy position because of the parents' money, is now able to drum down and use this matrix to cut people out when you're not even looking at that person and everything that person's done, right? And then there's other times in that matrix where people are doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, and they may be in a 3-star spot doing things that they're not supposed to, but that's completely overlooked. So absolutely, it needs a total reset. You know, we put that check engine light in, right, in the thumbnail. Why? Because when you're driving and you see that little check engine light come up, what's the first thing you say is, what? Ah, shit! What the hell is this? How much is it going to cost me? It's a BS thing, you know. Is it just a CO2 alarm, or is it some other thing that's in my car? Is my gas cap not on right? You know, and you got to bring it in and get the diagnostics. Well, I think today you and I are doing a diagnostic check on the NYPD, and we're going to tell you that you need to scrap this car and get a new one, because there are so many factors that are affecting the NYPD, affecting the men and women that do the job every day, external, internal, which John and Eric talk about all the time, is a major factor. And until those things are reset, the job is like you just said, it is spiraled down into the ground where it's crashed and it's gone. You need to rebuild it from the ground up now, because it's so bad. And you need to start respecting what the police officers do and what they're capable of doing.
And what they want to do. The cops want to do their job. You think a cop wants to stand out there and get screamed at? Listen, First Amendment activities, right? You want to call me names. You want to say this.
Right.
You want to say I suck. You want to say I'm a fascist. That I'm a Nazi or whatever. That's fine. That's fine. But you don't have the right to threaten me, threaten my family. You don't have a right to get in and touch me. You don't have a right to spit on me. You don't have a right to throw things at me. You don't have a right to grab the barrier away from me. The job needs to start backing up the cops again. Because when we were cops, good, bad, or indifferent, our bosses had our back, and actually the politicians had our back, and the very, very vast majority of the public had our back. Now, who's got the cops back? Some retired guys on a podcast, you know, talking about it, trying to help, trying to get the word out there. The cops have to do their job and have the begin. I've always said that. It was my job to give the cops the ability, the tools, and the training to do their jobs effectively and safely, and then back them up and support them when they were right and correct them when they were wrong. That's our job. Not to pander to this public bullshit, all this wokeness, that the police are just evil. And everything that we do is evil and for the wrong reason. And that you have the right to go in and steal anything you want in a store because the DA is not going to prosecute it. You have the right to put your hands on a police officer. You have the right to grab and yank at a police officer that's placing somebody under arrest to try and stop them from arresting somebody else because nobody's going to do anything about it. Because somebody's going to stand there with their cell phone and scream, "Ooh, police brutality. He can't breathe. Let him go. Let him go. Stop. He's not resisting." Meanwhile, the guy's doing everything in the world to resist. But because you're screaming into your phone that they're not resisting, then they're not resisting. That's your reality. Because you don't know what resisting is. Resisting can be passive. You don't even have to physically fight to resist arrest. If I tell you you're under arrest and you tell me to go F myself, you're resisting arrest. Because I have that authority as long as it's a lawful arrest. But the problem is, right, DAs say, well, I'm going to drop the charges on that. So now you get the lawyers that say, well, it wasn't a lawful arrest because the DA wouldn't prosecute it. But you have to have the job and the city's attorneys to stand up and say, no, it was their job. It was within their purview. It was their right. They did their job. The DA chose not to prosecute. So it's on the DA, not the cop that's doing his or her job out there. But because they're not, because they're on the hook for CCRBs that are going to ruin their career, because they're on the hook because they don't have qualified immunity and they may have to go into their pocket, because they're watching their fellow officers be arrested because the first 6 punches were justified, but the 7th and 8th punch of a guy they didn't feel was justified, watching a frame by frame by frame body-worn camera, so they convict the frigging guy of a misdemeanor assault because they felt that the last 2 punches weren't justified in a 7-second or 6-second incident. It's insanity where we're at, and it has to stop. And that's the point. Enough is enough. The job needs to back the police officers again and let them do their job, because if they're not doing their job, that's why all these cops are getting hurt. That's why more people are getting hurt. And you let this create. You started out saying it, Rob. You started saying it. We're not stopping it in the beginning. It's being allowed to escalate and escalate and escalate and escalate to the point where it goes from verbal to physical.
Yeah, no, and listen, I agree with what Terry Murnane says, right? He talks about we have to look the part too. That's important, right? You have to and I think a couple other people agree with him. You don't go to a Chick-fil-A, which I love, right? They have really good food there. You don't go to Chick-fil-A and drive in and see somebody disarray, sloppy looking, and think I'm going to buy a chicken sandwich from that guy. I don't walk in a doctor's office and see my doctor dressed sloppily, jeans or whatever, not presenting themselves. So the police have always been a professional organization, professional job. It's time to start bringing that back, okay? Because that look, that pride that you have as a person in that uniform, the patch that you wear on the shoulders of all the men and women that have died before us, you represent a lot of people. You should be proud of that, and you should stand there tall and strong. All right, better yourself. Get yourself in the physical fitness, be able to handle it, and present yourself as a law enforcement professional. That's the most important thing. You don't want, you don't need braids. You don't need a bun on the top of your head. Okay. Let's act professional there. Crazy 10-7, right? No more man buns, dreadlocks, long beards, and don't forget the turbans and the cap devices. Let's set. We had a standard. We continue to lower it in every like we spoke about, Ron. Every aspect we have spoken about, whether it's taking arrests, professionalism, everything. You have to set yourself and look professional, and then you will get that respect back and act professionally. If you have to arrest somebody for discon or harassment, like you said, do it and take them into custody and do it in the most I guess using the least amount of force necessary to
Right.
make the arrest, right? That's
Right.
the old adage.
Right. I am not advocating to go out there and be a brutal police force.
No.
I never was, and I don't think we ever were.
It was
Well,
the old
I
adage.
don't want to say ever, but in our
Nope.
time, I don't think we were. We did things professionally. We did things, we went out there and we did our job, and you're right, we looked the part. There's a federal, I wish I had it. There's a federal study that was done where they interviewed cop killers, and they said,
Yes.
Why did you kill this cop?
Right.
Because he let me. Because you got stopped 20 miles down the road. Why didn't you kill that cop? Well, because that cop came up, was squared away, came up to the car, didn't give me the opportunity. This guy came up, blah, 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 stood in front of the door, and I did what I did. That's, I'm very, very loosely paraphrasing. But when you maintain a professional appearance, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference. And listen, we talk about this whole appearance with the NYPD uniforms that started going south, I think under Dermot Shea.
Yes, Shea.
They started with this whole thing about, again, let's go to DEI and let's go to, give everybody and their mother some type of religious accommodation. Well, let me get John started. How'd those religious accommodations work once COVID came around? When you had a legitimate religious accommodation or religious beliefs, not just everybody, somebody finally found Leviticus in the Bible and said, I can wear a beard, right? So everybody passed around Leviticus and wrote in Leviticus and put that for their beard to get a thing. Well, Leviticus isn't just about the beard. Leviticus also says that you can't cut the sides of your hair, right? So I said to one person one time, and somebody kind of said, Ron, you got to be careful. You're going to wind up with an EEO, which is true. I would have been substantiated, right? Yeah. Because I'm calling you out. You're quoting Leviticus, but Leviticus says that, you can't shave your beard, but you also can't cut the sides of your hair, right? That's what's in that passage that everybody quoted. But it doesn't matter. The job allowed it to happen. And then everybody went to the beard. Then you went from 1/3 of an inch to anything, right? Mutton chops, people talking about mutton chops, everything. It's just insane. You have to get back to looking the part and acting the part. And the biggest thing is the job needs to back the cops up to allow them to do their job. And the cops need to feel that they're being backed up. Because where did we get, right there you go, John, 98% approval rate for religious accommodations pre-COVID. Once COVID came around, friends and family discount is the only thing that came through, right? We'll call it the friends and family discount on the religious accommodations, because those people that truly held to their religious accommodations, okay, didn't get them. Even those who had medical accommodations because they had natural immunity. But we're not talking about that fight. But that was also part of the problem, and the decline in the NYPD is allowing that to happen and allowing those senior members to go. People like John, people like Marlon Bethel, terminated because he wouldn't take a shot that wasn't approved by the FDA. So it's just one thing after another that this job let go. They need to get a hold of it again, right? And it will correct itself, because one of the biggest problems with recruitment is that no cop is telling anybody else to be a cop anymore. Who's telling their family and friends? That was the best recruitment tool, was the membership itself.
Well, I think that Dermochet, de Blasio totally screwed this department up with all the stuff that they did. Dermochet got his great gig in Hudson Yards, making $500,000. All right, what's your legacy, pal? You ruined the department with all your little stupid rules and DEI stuff. Listen, when I took the job, I knew the uniform standard. All right, it told me I had to shave every day. It told me I had to keep my hair. No, it was called gross mutton chops. I don't even know what the hell a gross mutton chop was, but it said no gross mutton chops. So all those things were in place, and I took the job with the understanding that it did. With the mandate, the job never told me I had to take any type of a medicine or anything else. All right, I was up to speed with everything, with all my things that I had to take as a kid. So I was good. And all these things got thrown in later on. I go back to the old adage, right? It was always know your job, do your job. Okay. So that's where I'm saying is everybody out there, you men and women, set yourself up, look professional. I don't care if the sergeant lets you get away with wearing dirty pants or, a ripped shirt. No, look professional, because when the bad guy's looking at you, that's what they see. Like you said, at the car stops, when somebody sees a sloppy cop walk up to them, they know where they can go. If they look up something, like how many times you get pulled over by a New York State trooper, and
I still get nervous.
Yeah, you're like, oh my, all right, my hands are on the wheel. I'm like, all right, officer, my wallet's in my right front pocket. I know I'm not playing, right? Because they are professional and they always look professional. And that's what we need. We need somebody that's going to bring the department back to that. We need that reset, because we're in a way bad spot right now.
And it's understandable why the cops aren't doing it. I don't want to sit here and preach from a pulpit and think that I don't understand the things that they're up against. And that's where we're explaining. We're talking about what they're up against. I think from the executive perspective, the upper echelon and the executives of the NYPD need to grow a pair back and start backing the cops up and pushing back against all this nonsense. And they have to start allowing the cops to do their job and backing them up when they do their job properly. But they have to. And it doesn't, I don't want to don't call it broken windows, whatever you want to call it. But the cops have to be in control and not allow all of these civil disorder issues to fester, because that's what's causing all these cops from getting hurt, and that's what's causing all this chaos out there, because they're not taking control. We see it in video after video after video after video after video of these cops just getting abused, and you never saw that before.
No, this is a huge message for the police commissioner and the upper executives of the department, because like QCB said, we need a Daryl Gates or a Grady Judd in the NYPD. When you have a leader that's going to take control, represent the men and women that work for them, and stand tall and eliminate any political, weakness, and just call it straight down the middle of what it is and what they need to do. But by no means I don't think either one of us are saying that anything's wrong with the rank and file. We know that you're capable of doing the job, and we understand the pressures of not doing your job. But I think what we need to see is guys and gals step up start doing more, taking that initiative, right? Don't let people disrespect you. And if you have to, the summons gets dismissed and the person gets taken, let go, that's fine. If they're not prosecuted, that's not your job. Your job is to make arrests. You're not a prosecutor. You're a police officer. And hopefully the upper echelons will see and understand that that's what needs to be done. I mean, it's our executive perspective of, changing the department to the better.
Yeah. Well said, Rob. And I think on that, we're gonna have to wind it down. It's 6:50 for those who are interested in the debate coming up. So we had that hard out today. We appreciate everybody in the chat. It was a lively chat. We appreciate that. I think there was one more. Class of 8311 is sending you $9.99, Rob, for a hammer and some hooks for a background to help you out there. Just wanted to mention that before we jump off. But we appreciate everybody in the chat. We appreciate all the support. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow at 13:05, Sal Greco show on the Finest Unfiltered Network. He's got former debate moderator and CBS News anchor Levon Putnoy will be on discussing, I guess, the local politics and the debates that are going on. And then Friday at 08:05, John and thankfully Eric is back. We'll be on with Marlon for the roundtable. They will discuss the weekly news and anything else that's going on during the week. And it's always a lively discussion. It's always appreciated. And then we'll be back next Wednesday at 5:05 p.m. with the executive perspective. So until then, be safe, everybody.
Yeah, be safe out there.